And then somewhere along the way, I found nude yoga.
And we're live.
Yay!
Woohoo! And
Dancing from the jingle.
let's talk about you. You are Blaize Hall, and you've done a lot of things, and you do a lot of things. The primary thing you asked to put down was somatic communication coach, which I have to admit, I have no idea what that is. So start off by saying what a somatic communication coach is.
Cool. Yeah. So I have a wellness company called Weeping Willow Wellness, where I offer several different things. My primary offer right now is a somatic communication coaching program called Whole Body Communicator. Now,
Yeah.
are you familiar with the word somatic?
Vaguely. I
Okay.
know it's
So somatic
exists.
somatic comes from the Greek root word soma, which just means body.
Yeah.
So somatic is of the body. So in this program, we use body-based practices to make lasting changes. So a lot of programs, oh, here, if you read this thing and you just understand this concept, you can change your whole life.
Yeah.
And that may be true for a very teeny tiny fraction of the population who are top-down learners, right? Can understand the concept in their head and then apply it to their life and actually have a transformation. But most of us have deep-rooted patterns that live in our bodies, from trauma, from just how human beings are wired. We're very body-based learners, kinesthetic learners, auditory learners, many different learning styles that all involve learning things in the body. So somatic programs actually use practices that rewire your physiological response to what it is that you want to change.
Oh, okay.
That make more sense?
And how did you get into this? I mean, it's like we'll talk more about because I mean there's the interesting nude yoga part, which I wanted to talk about at some part, but we'll get to that because I don't want to
Sure.
like
Well,
jump to
that certainly ties in. That certainly ties in. Naked yoga is totally part of the story.
yeah.
So for me, I have been an artist my whole life. I've been a
Yeah.
dancer, a mover, and very interested in holistic wellness my whole life.
Yeah.
And I moved to LA primarily to pursue acting, also music. And I came in with all of this trauma. I grew up in a household that had some toxicity to it, definitely had some abusive patterns happening. And in New York City, before I moved to LA, I had been in an abusive relationship. When I moved to LA, shortly after moving, I became pregnant and it was going to be a solo mom adventure, and it still is. So, yeah, lots of crazy life events. And within all of that, I had worked as a sex worker, as a stripper, a fetish worker, lots of different jobs in there, primarily because of an approach to relating to humans that was very transactional. Because of all the trauma that I'd lived through, I was kind of seeing the world as this place where, like, okay, everyone's trying to get something. I'm trying to get something too. I'm going to get whatever I can from this world and from people and relate to people that way. And it was really harmful to my relationships, of course, as one could imagine. So, anyways, here I am in LA, sometimes stripping and then pregnant, stripping a little bit while I was pregnant, and then eventually quit. And trying to figure out life and realizing that I was carrying all this trauma and all these ways that I was relating to people that were so unhealthy. I was continuing to call in friendships and romantic connections that were not healthy, and just feeling like, what the heck? Something's not working here. I need to get better. I had my child. I was holding things down, doing all these crazy odd jobs, just kind of like, well, she doesn't know any better. She's a baby. Like, I'll have it figured out by the time she's older. She's about 2, and we start having a lot of breakdown in our communication. I know that may sound silly, me and a 2-year-old having a breakdown in communication, but it was what it felt like. Everything she did was triggering me. And I was treating her in ways that were hardwired into my nervous system because that's how I'd been treated as a kid. And thank goddess, my friend pointed me in the direction of this parenting coach who started to teach me about the nervous system and about how our body remembers. I don't know if
Yeah.
you book The Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone's obsessed with it. It's a really, really triggering book if you do decide to check it out if you haven't, any of our listeners. So just be warned. But yeah, it really highlights how our bodies remember behavior and they remember what we've learned, even beyond our explicit memory, right? Our implicit memory. So my implicit memories had left me with tools that were not working as a parent and were not how I wanted to raise my child. So I started to reach out for all these different tools and I found somatics. And I
Yeah.
found that when I actually learned body based practices that could actually help me change my behavior and change my physical experience when I was triggered, I could actually show up differently for my child.
Yeah.
And so that's how I began to create the program that applies to all kinds of communication, whether it's parent child, relationship, you and your boss, you and yourself. And then somewhere along the way, I found nude yoga. And because of all the ways that I existed in sex workplaces and also in unhealthy relationships, I had a lot of trauma around being naked with people too,
Yeah.
because I'd been in lots of experiences that
Yeah.
were really unsafe.
Yeah.
And when I found nude yoga and began attending nudist events and then eventually teaching, I discovered a community where people were practicing being naked with a boundary. Like,
Yeah.
we're all naked, and that's all that's going to happen. We're just going to do yoga, or we're just going to host a comedy show. And it
Okay.
was like, whoa, my body started to relax every time I was naked with those people because my body knew, wow, I get to have this experience and I can trust this community and I can trust that, like, no one's going to do anything or,
Yeah.
yeah. And so I started to cement this possibility in my body of what it could be like to be nude and empowered, to be nude and safe. And so that became a huge part of my trauma healing offerings as well as offering clothing optional embodiment activities, which primarily is naked yoga, but sometimes I shake it up and do a naked dance class or something.
Oh, okay. So it's about learning to kind of accept your body and be in a community of people who also accept it. So when you bring in a new person into the group, is it a case of them having to is their therapy in a way them going accepting that they're naked in front of this group of people? And is it all one sex or is it all multiple sexes? Like how does this work?
Yeah, most of my offerings are for all genders.
Yeah,
Every now and then I've had a women and non-binary folks class, but primarily it's all genders. And yeah, it really is different for every person. People report back a lot of different kinds of experiences. Some people say that, they have to go slow. They have to, I've
yeah,
had some people come in and, just have their top off and that's enough for that day. And then I've had some people report that it's like a shock at first when they first do it. And then it immediately just feels so natural as soon as
yeah.
they're in it, because it really is a lot more natural than we're taught that it is.
Well, I remember as a kid that we used to go on holiday to the south of France, and people were topless all over the place. And
Yeah.
after the initial novelty of it, for about 10 minutes or so, everybody's just like, "Oh yeah, accept it."
Hmm.
But in the UK and especially in the US, there is a real weird kind of stigma about
Yeah.
nudity
I
being
always say that
impossible.
the US is both hypersexual, like hypersexualized, everything is sexualized and
Yeah,
sold as sexualized, and also like hyper vigilant around, yeah, being uncomfortable with it. It's like, oh yeah, we're all obsessed with sex, but like no one wants to talk about it.
yeah. Well, maybe
Instead of
everybody
just like,
sex.
sex is a normal part of the human experience and we should talk about it.
Well, yeah, maybe it's because of that kind of lack of gradient in a way. There's not this kind of. It's either everybody's fully naked and doing everything, or they're not doing anything, and it's all a
Fair.
bit weird. Okay, so I'm gonna do a first this show and look at your one sheet, which you've got You've got a huge amount of things that you've done. You've got like
All on there.
surviving cancer. Let's talk about that.
Sure.
Anybody who's wondering what a one sheet is, like the more professional podcast guests, of which Blaize is one, have had this little sheet where they send you and they tell you everything about them. So let's talk about the surviving cancer part.
Yeah. So in 2022, I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer, and I'd been having symptoms for a really long time. And I had previously been diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune condition of the thyroid. It starts to deteriorate the thyroid. And I knew that I had a growth in my neck, and because I could feel it. And I kept having doctors like do a scan and just tell me that it wasn't there. I
Yeah,
was like, guys, no, like you, please look again. And sure enough, eventually they did find that the growth was cancerous, and also that there were cancerous growths on my thyroid. So I had to have a full thyroidectomy and a lateral neck dissection, which, trigger warning for any guests who are squeamish about things.
yeah,
Essentially, my neck was cut open all the way from the thyroid all the way around to the back. So we were joking that it was like half a guillotine.
yeah,
And then they open it up and dig around, and they took out 36 lymph nodes. That was
yeah.
dangerous.
Ooh,
Yeah, pretty invasive surgery, and then that was followed by radioactive iodine. But all in all, I'm alive. I'm healthy. I haven't had any recurrences
yeah,
of
fingers crossed.
cancer, and it all happened when my daughter was young enough that like she remembers that it happened, and she knows that it's part of our story, but I don't think she has any explicit memories, at least, of the
Yeah.
experience. I don't We'll see how her implicit memories play out in years to come, but bringing
Okay.
it back to our vocab terms. Do you
Oh,
understand explicit versus implicit memories?
well, you might as well.
For our
So
listeners.
give me a chance to look at the cheat sheet again. And
For our listeners.
yeah.
I love to teach, can you tell?
Oh no, well, that's the way to do it.
This is why I built my life around coaching and teaching people. So explicit memories are memories that we have access to. I can
Yeah,
easily remember, oh yeah, I was in my first musical theater play when I was 8 years old. It was Brigadoon. I did it with my mom, blah, blah, blah. That's an
yeah,
explicit memory. I can pick out specific, like one rehearsal, one of the guys in the cast swung me out over the edge of the stage in a big spin. And I remember how fun that was. And that probably sparked my love of partner dance with lifts and acro lifts. Explicit memories. Implicit memories are things we don't have access to. So
yeah,
a lot of times, first 5 years of our lives, but they still live in our nervous system. They still live in our personality. They still live and play out in our lives in various ways. And people in our lives might remember them for us. I don't know. My mom can tell me that I had a difficult labor, and I broke her tailbone coming out of her, and it was like very tumultuous for both of us. Who
ooh,
knows
yeah.
how that affected, my early babyhood? Was there extra stress hormones, extra cortisol in my body and her body, in our relationship? I was a really colicky baby, they call it, which just means crying and crying, crying, inconsolable for weeks. Who knows what that was about?
And presumably, the implicit memories are the ones that you mainly help people with, because explicit memories people generally, I think they're better with, or maybe they need to reinterpret them, but they at least know they're there. But as you say, like the implicit ones are probably ones that are more in the body, captures experience. Is that
Yeah,
correct? Like,
it's kind of a mix of both.
you know,
So, for example, I can say that I have explicit memories about certain experiences in college that happened that
yeah,
were not consensual. I'll just
yeah,
leave it at that. And I remember them. And I do know how they affect me in my current relationships. And I still need somatic practices that I can bring into my relationships and that I can bring into my embodied existence now to continue to heal my experience of relating physically to others. And so that's an explicit memory that I apply somatics to because of these reactions that happen, because of these experiences that happen in my physical communication with others.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of times it is implicit memory. Oh, I don't know why, whenever my partner, just an example, whenever my partner like slams the car door too loud, I jump. I don't know
Yeah.
why. And maybe this is not actually an example of me. This is just a hypothetical.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Maybe at some point, this person who has this jump reaction, like jump scare reaction to slamming doors, experienced something when they were really little, like a lot of loud noises, like a lot of, fighting in the house that had doors slamming. And so every time a door slams, their body remembers that and prepares physically for a fight. But we don't need to know that to treat the symptom of the
Yeah.
jump reaction to every time a door slams.
Yeah. So, what kind of techniques do you use? I mean, we talked about the nude yoga and like the other things you do, but presumably that doesn't apply. Well, that's not all the time, and that's not the
Listen,
only
nude
thing.
yoga is the cure for everything. Everybody get over here.
Well, it might be, to be fair. You could always say like that to people, but like, I mean, it's got a whole list of things here that you do, like cognitive behavioural therapy, which is very good, and
Mhm.
I'm not sure what the hell was DIR floor time? Uh,
DIR
meditate.
floor time is a method that I learned working with individuals with autism.
Oh, okay.
Um, and it's essentially a play based therapy that's mostly for kids, but it can be for young adults as well, depending on where they are in their developmental difference spectrum.
Yeah,
And so you essentially use play in a specifically applied way to help them move through different stages of like how they can relate, basically.
yeah.
So, for example, if you have a kid who's completely nonverbal, you would use play. DIR stands for, oh boy,
Something.
it's
Uh,
been a minute. Developmental individual relationship, I think. I might be
oh,
wrong. Hopefully
yeah,
I'm right. It's been a minute since I used that modality actually. But essentially you're using the play to develop a safe relationship for the child. And then over the course of building a safe relationship, you can use play to coax them into more and more levels of communication. So maybe when they first come in, they won't even make eye contact. After a few weeks, maybe they're making eye contact with you.
oh, okay.
After a few more weeks, maybe they're using more gestures than they did before, and maybe like single word statements. And then who knows, after a couple of years, maybe they are using sentences.
Yeah,
And so that kind of applies into some of the work that I do because essentially, as a coaching role, I'm building a safe relationship with clients.
yeah,
So some clients come in and they're like, I don't even know how to talk about myself. I don't even feel comfortable sharing the trauma. Like they know what it is, but they don't have any safety in their body. And so we just start by teaching practices that build safety in the body. Resourcing is one, learning to resource in the room, learning to do room scans and find what in the room makes you feel more comfortable, how to allocate sensations of the body that feel grounding, that feel pleasurable, or at least neutral. We can usually pretty quickly locate tension in the body. If I asked you right now, where in your body do you feel tense? Could you tell me a spot?
um, oh, probably my wrists at the moment. I don't know if that's like weird or not, but
Oh, good for you.
yeah,
Most of my clients come in and can easily name where in their body they feel tense. And sometimes it's much harder to name where in your body you feel good. Because when we say, okay, do a body scan, at the top of a yoga class, do a body scan, people go, oh, there's my left shoulder. And oh, there's my low back and my right hip and my jaw. What happens when we invite in where in your body do you feel good? Oh, actually, my tummy feels perfect amount of full. It feels soft. Oh, my breath actually is moving pretty easily. Breathing pretty fully. My hands feel sort of soft and tingly. Wow, I have all access to all these positive sensations. And now you're so much more present in your body. You're so much more able to access good feelings. You're resourced.
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
you have that to support you as you then maybe move into discussing more challenging things. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
It's funny. I actually listened to the audiobook of The Body Keeps the Score not
Mm,
that long ago. And I was thinking, I can't remember anything. And now it's all been coming back to me. There's a lot of very good chapters about all the stuff she does to help people in terms of
yeah.
life. So let's kind of like, I'll ignore, because I'm getting into job interview territory. I used to job interview people years ago when I used to be in corporate. So I'll ignore your one sheet for a second and just say, like, and you've touched on this. Who would be the typical person who would come in and ask for your help? And who are the people that you help the most? Are there people who come to you and you just can't help them at all? Who is your clientele and who is your ideal client in terms of
Yeah.
work?
I've had quite a range of clients. Anyone from a business CEO who wants to expand confidence in boardroom meetings or conference presentations and has like a physical freeze response to speaking in
Oh,
people. That's something that we would apply these techniques to, helping the body to feel more resourced, and that will shift
yeah,
everything. Communication. I've had artists come in who, maybe have some neurodivergence or some ADHD symptoms and just need support in how to provide structure for themselves without making their life more stressful with that
yeah,
structure. It's a really delicate balance as an artist sometimes because artists can be very critical of themselves. And so for that, we do a lot of work. We do listening to the body, the shifting how they're showing up in their bodies. And then we do a lot of mindset work, a lot
yeah,
of shifting how they're talking to themselves, shifting their communication with themselves so that their inner children feel soothed and supported while also, their inner reparents can come in and give themselves the structure that they need to succeed. And
yeah,
it's a delicate balance. So for those clients, we're kind of striking the balance between supporting them and giving them structure. I have people come in who are having problems with their spouse, their loved one, their parent, a lot a lot of relationship struggles of all kinds, whether it's romantic, familial. Yeah, and just learning how to resource themselves, how to create healthy boundaries, how to show up in those communications, learning how to support themselves when they're feeling triggered and still show up and give themselves, boundaries if they when they need it. Everybody needs boundaries.
yeah,
So how do you lovingly hold a boundary without engaging in violent communication?
yeah.
It's a big one.
Okay.
As far as people that I can't help at all, because that was one part of your question.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, you could have just ignored that and
I
carried on.
mean, no, it's a really interesting question. I love
Yeah,
that. So, what's the other side of this? I have had someone come in and ask me, "Do I have to pay for this?"
yeah, yeah. Broke people.
Yeah, and so unfortunately, I can't help people
Yeah,
who are not willing to invest in themselves. Otherwise, I don't have a business. I have,
yeah,
a hobby. But I do try to redirect those people to resources, books that they can start with if they're looking for a free resource, or at least like follow my content. I offer tons of tips on social media for free. So at least start with following. And I am going to be rolling out a group coaching program in the new year that's going to be a lower price point than my one on one. And then I have had people join my introductory session and just say, like, I can't talk about myself. And we talked about that a little bit earlier. And so for those clients, we absolutely can start with resourcing the body, with learning some embodied breath, with
Mm.
doing some stage by stage relaxation, practicing things that help people feel safe in their body. But ultimately, if they don't feel comfortable with me for whatever reason, if I'm not the right coach for them, or maybe they're just not in the place in their life to be ready to talk about this stuff yet and to be ready to work on it, then I can't really help them. Like if they want to start with some more accessible practices and then eventually move into discussing what they really want to work on, we can totally start there. But if they aren't ready to do the work, then it doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. So when originally, because you put a post in a group saying like, "I want to be a guest," and you put this
Yeah.
amazing one sheet up there,
Yeah.
and I asked you like, "What is the best way to contact you?" And you were like,
Hmm.
"Oh well, do you want to?" And it was only because you've got so many different Instagram accounts and ways to contact you on here. And that's because you do different things. Like you're an artist, and presumably you do music as well, because it says you've got an
Yes.
account for music. So talk about like the art and music side. What kind of art do you create? What sort of art do you like
Yeah.
to create? And presumably it's not bringing in enough money to give up all the other work.
Well, listen, it's all tied together. Arts and healing are two sides of the same coin, I say, and I've just continually seen that more and more. The most powerful artists out there, I think, are the ones who have done a lot of their own inner healing work,
Yeah,
their own enlightenment journeys and spiritual journeys. And it's the same for me. So the deeper I go with this healing, the more provocative my own art can be, the more confidence I have as an artist, and the more distilled I'm getting on what it is I want to create. So I did come out to LA for the film industry, film and TV
yeah,
industry. And I'd spent a couple years in New York before that doing some off Broadway theater and a lot of training. And acting has been the craft that I've refined since I was 8 years old, alongside singing and piano and dance. And I love acting. I am a really good actor. I have way more than my 10,000 hours if we're
yeah,
going by Malcolm Gladwell's rule. And the further along I've gone in my own spiritual journey and healing journey, the more I've realized that being all in on the Los Angeles film and TV industry isn't really how I want to shape my life.
yeah,
I definitely welcome the right roles and the right involvements. I'm shooting a little fun, tiny short film. I guess you'd call it more of a sketch with my improv team this Saturday, actually. So that'll be super fun. So I definitely still welcome in fun acting roles and projects that, feel good to me and feel supportive to my journey. But so much of the film and TV industry asks you to just like shape your entire life around being completely available for any role at any moment. And then you might not book
yeah.
anything for months. And it's just not very sustainable, especially as a single parent.
Yeah. I think there's going to make a societal comment, but I think there are some professions and areas where they know that there are so many people who want to get into it that they kind of take the
Oh,
piss
yeah.
to use that
Well,
British
for sure.
expression.
There's always 30 to 500 more applicants for the same role who will gladly work under any conditions, and that's fine. I've just realized over the years that the way I want to shape my life and the value that I add to any room is so much more than just being, you know, livestock number 23. Like, sorry to put it bluntly.
Yeah, e-
And
extra
that's not to
14.
say that there aren't many, many, many amazing
Yeah,
actors who also bring so much value and are able to structure their lives like that. It's just not something that I'm able to commit to in that way. And so that really brought about my refocus on music. So after beating cancer, I didn't know if my voice was ever going to come back.
yeah,
I sounded kind of like that for a while because had a throat surgery right around my thyroid. And I was really, really scared. And I'd always been writing songs my whole life. I'd always been writing songs. but they were all just like in a Google Drive folder. Maybe one or two of them I played with my ukulele on YouTube or something. And I always said, oh no, like I don't need to record it. I'm not going to be like a songwriter. And then right before I got sick, my partner and I had made a feature film together. It's called A More Perfect Union. It's not out yet, but keep an ear to the ground because it will be. And I had written and performed a song for the movie, in the movie. It has since been taken out of the movie to make the movie a little shorter because it's almost 2 hours long. But yeah, so I was so proud of this song and I was so excited to have recorded it before I had this crazy surgery.
Mm.
And I just prayed that my voice would come back and that I would have the chance to keep singing, because I don't think I realized how much I loved it and how much I really did want to do it until there was the chance that I might not be able to.
Yeah.
And so once I started to heal from the surgery and my voice did come back and it was super powerful, there's actually somewhere in the ether a voice memo of me singing to my partner. I had to go out to this cabin in Big Bear for radiation because you have to be isolated when you're radioactive.
Oh, okay.
And I was just singing and singing in this cabin, and I made a little voice memo. I was like, look how high my voice can go. And I was singing this like super high, almost whistle singing note that I hadn't been able to reach since high school. And I was like, look at this. I don't know, maybe like removing my thyroid like created more range. I don't know how that's possible.
Well, sometimes it happens.
But yeah, as soon as I got back from radiation and realized I was going to be okay and realized I had my voice, I just made it my mission that I was always going to keep recording songs and bring all my songs to life because they deserve to exist out in the world and not just in my Google Drive. So that's been my mission for the last couple of years, is putting all the focus that I used to pour into the acting industry into my own music and creating something that lives on.
Yeah. Well, I've got two questions quickly to ask you.
Yeah.
One is purely out of just pure. There's a backstory behind this, but you don't know Kevin Bacon by any chance, do you?
Right, the 5 degrees.
Yeah.
I think that one of my actor friends was on set with Kevin Bacon. And so I think since they were technically in the same room, I think I'm 3 degrees or something. Whatever
Yeah.
that would be, like him to my friend to me, right? 3 degrees, 2 degrees.
Well, the funny thing is, like a couple of years back, and I was trying to find, like, I actually met somebody who was somebody's friend of mine's husband who had directed Kevin Bacon. So I got to the like 1 degree of separation.
What's your bacon number?
So, well, yeah, it depends how tenuous you get, really, isn't it? And it's like how. And the other question is about your Substack. Now, I've started a Substack. It's got like about 10 people who subscribe to it. But
Amazing.
it's quite impressive. So, talk a bit about your Substack newsletter and how people can find out about that.
Yeah, so it's called Artist of Everything. So a couple years ago, my daughter's school had a parents' work, I don't know what you would call it, like a parents' work fair. So all the parents who wanted to could come put up a booth about what they do and kind of inspire the kids, different jobs that you could do when you grow up. And I was like, oh, I totally want to do that. But then I was talking to my daughter, I think she was 5 at the time. I was like, honey, what do I tell everybody I do? Like, we just made a movie. So in that movie, I wrote, directed, acted, produced. I run a wellness company. I teach naked yoga. I do reiki. I teach breathwork. I teach somatics. I write poetry. I'm working on a nude oracle deck, which is going to be really cool, but that's for another day.
Yeah.
I make all kinds of things. And I was like, honey, what do I tell them? I make music. I sing. She's like, Mom, you're an artist of everything.
Yeah, it's a lovely title, isn't it?
I was like, that is so good. You are so right, honey. Because basically everything I do is tied into living as an artist.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the through line of all of it that allows it all to flow, is just dropping into that artistic flow state and trusting how everything feeds into everything else. When I teach yoga, I'm practicing my, presentation. And then when I'm doing improv, I'm practicing my improvisational skills that then I bring into my coaching, because coaching is improv. I'm constantly doing a dance back and forth with my clients of what they bring into any given situation. Oh, you're bringing this? Okay, let me think, like, which tool should we pull out to try together today? Okay, how about this? Oh, that's not working today. How about this? So yeah, Artist of Everything is what the Substack is called, coined by my child. And I started writing that this summer because I realized I needed a place where I could gather everyone who wants to hear what's going on in my life, whether it's a new single I'm releasing or a music video
Yeah.
or a new course I'm offering or my coaching program, or just my hot take on what's going on in the world and how it's affecting me and how it might be affecting all of us, and what somatic tool I recommend that everybody try if they're up for it. And I was getting really stressed out with Instagram because I had joined a mentoring program that was helping me do Instagram launches. And I was just feeling my ADHD getting worse and worse the more time I spent on Instagram. And I realized, gosh, I want a place to send people that's off of Instagram.
Yeah.
Like, no shame to Instagram. If you love it, great. It's there, it's a tool. It can definitely be helpful. But my advice as a coach is always like spend less time on Instagram, maybe zero time on TikTok.
Yeah.
And if that's my advice, why am I just constantly creating content there? Like, I need a place to send people that actually feels supportive of what I think is healthy. And I think it's much healthier for us to sit down or maybe listen if you do an audio version while you do your chores or something and receive long form communication
Yeah.
that actually allows us to sit with concepts for a while, consume things at a slower pace, rather than these 15 to 90-second little blips that, and then you're scrolling on to the next one and your brain's just like boom, 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 like topic hopping.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even TikTok is pushing longer form content now. Like they're encouraging people to do 10 minutes. I mean, do
Yeah,
60
they
minutes.
do they do have some vertical films, they're calling it. It's
Yeah.
pretty funny, actually.
Anyway, we're a little bit over time, but then it's my show now. I can do what I like.
Yeah.
Tell people, like, somebody might have watched this and they'll be like, "Oh, I'm in the LA area. I'd quite like. I've got a bit of trauma, or maybe I just fancy doing naked yoga or something," and they want to get in touch with you. How can they get in touch with you and maybe make use of your services?
Absolutely. Everyone can email me at weepingwillowwellness1, number one, weepingwillowwellness1 at gmail.com. You can also reach out at Weeping Willow Wellness on Instagram or Fermata Blaize. Fermata is a musical symbol, and it's spelled Fermata, Blaize, Blaize. That's on Instagram, or email if you're more interested in the musical side of things.
Yeah.
Those are 2 Instagrams and an email. That's probably enough, right?
Oh yeah. And if
Yeah.
I remember when I'm editing it, I'll try and put it at the bottom. If
Yeah.
not, people in the future, you can have a go at me for forgetting to put the email addresses on the bottom here.
The notes, the show notes.
Oh, well, no, I mean, because, well, this is the live thing, which somebody might be watching somewhere, but and the edited version, I tried to put like helpful stuff in and remove. I've started removing the ums and ahs, which I've noticed. Like, most of the time, people remove ums and ahs wrong from video. You're best to just mute it. I mean, it can be like people do a lot like this, but most of the time you don't notice. People are just using ums and ahs to fill their breaths in. So
Mhm. Well, if
that,
anyone has trouble using ums and ahs too much or other filler words, come learn somatic communication with me.
oh yeah, yeah, a bit of nude yoga
We'll
and
teach you how
sort
to
your
feel
ums.
calm and resourced in your body so you don't feel the need to fill that space. Space
Anyway,
is fine.
yeah, thank you so much for being the guest today, Blaize, and
Yeah.
thanks for anybody who's watching it and anybody who watches in the future. And this is where I suddenly forget how to finish the show. Oh yes, I press this button. So
Thank you,
thanks so,
Tim.
thanks so much
Appreciate
for
it.
being the guest.
You're so welcome.
This is what God requires.